Hey, welcome to our introductory tutorial on the SPSS software program. Now, in this tutorial, we'll take a very basic look at how to just start entering data in SPSS. So how do we use this program? Okay, here in SPSS, notice first of all that when the software program is opened, we've got a spreadsheet-like grid here that we see. And in the rows of this spreadsheet, notice they all have numbers. Okay, so the rows have numbers, and the columns all have the word VAR, VAR, and so forth. This is the default name for a variable. Okay, VAR is just variable. And where a variable or a column and a row meet, this is called a cell. So we have each of these rectangles is known as a cell. There's two things we need to know or access when we create and enter data into SPSS. See these two tabs down here? We have the Data View tab and the Variable View tab. And we can click on each one. The Data View tab, first of all, has the gold background right now. That means it's the one that's currently shown in our window here. This is the Data View window. We could click on Variable View. And this is now the variable view window. Notice how it's changed. The rows are still given by numbers, but the columns now don't say VAR. They have different names like name, type, width, decimals, and so on. Okay, let's go back to the data view window for a minute, and the way we do that is by clicking on the data view tab. So we click on that, and I see I'm back here where my columns say VAR and so forth. There's a few other things, like this menu bar here where we have lots of options, and we have these toolbar buttons as well. We'll be accessing these later, once again. But in this tutorial, I just want to enter a basic data set to get you comfortable with how to use the software, how to enter data into the software program, and how to create variables as well. So, the first thing we want to do is, in this data set I'm going to enter in this tutorial today, we're going to do have a very small data set to make things easy, to make things manageable. So I'm going to have the scores for 3 different people on 2 variables. And my first variable will be named exam score. Okay, so what I want to do is, since I'm going to, at this point I want to create a variable in SPSS, I'm going to go to the variable view window. So how do I do that? Remember, I go down here to my tab, and I go to the Variable View tab, click on that. That brings up the Variable View window. Now under Name, click on this first cell in row 1, and I'm going to go ahead and type exam score. But what I typically like to do is I like to put an underscore in between my words. So if I press the Shift key and click on what looks like the hyphen or maybe dash key, that will make an underscore there. So I have exam score, and then I press enter. You may wonder, well, why don't you just use a space? Well, I'll show you. If I try to use a space here, like that, and I press enter, notice I get an error message. Variable name contains an illegal character. In other words, in SPSS, there's a few restrictions when you want to create a variable. Some things you can't do. And one thing is, you can't have any spaces involved. There's a few other things, like you can't use a number sign, and there's a few others as well, restrictions that don't really come into play for most people because they don't use special characters or symbols when they're creating their variable names. But so instead of a space, I like to use an underscore. Once again, if you want to just type exam score with no spaces, that's fine too. And then let's put our second variable into the variable view window, and that's going to be GPA. So I'll click here in the cell under name for row 2. I'm going to type this in all caps, GPA, and then I'll press enter. Okay, now notice in these columns, type both came up as numeric, width both came up as 8, decimal shows 2, and so forth. These are the default options that come up in SPSS. And in this tutorial, we're not going to worry about these right now. We'll just accept them as they came up. Okay, that's it for now. I've got my exam score variable created and my GPA score variable created. So now I'm done with the variable creation. So really I'm done with the variable view window. So now let's enter our data. And to do that, we want to go to the Data View tab.